Welcome back to another video, everybody. In today's video, we're going to be looking at the close of the transfer window. Yesterday was the transfer deadline shut, and now we are looking at what we have for the squad in terms of from now on until at least January. I'm sure there'll be some changes made in January, but for now, this is what we have to look at. So tomorrow, I'm actually going to do a squad breakdown video and kind of get into more of the specifics. For today, we're just going to kind of look at the transfers that came in yesterday and the transfers throughout the window as a whole, and kind of just give our thoughts and maybe we'll give a rating. I don't know. We'll see, but we'll give an overview of how we think it all went down. So let's just jump in and go to the most exciting news from yesterday, and that would be the signing of Randall Kolo Muani on a year-long loan, no option, no obligation so far in the contract, which is a little upsetting because I think that there's potential. I think we would. So let's talk about that signing. Actually, let's talk about that signing for a second. I think it's a great signing. I think it's a player that improves our first 11 quality. I think it's a player that should start most games. I can see why they did a loan because you already have Richie and Solanke on the books. So you don't want to necessarily bring in another striker and then have this big mess of three 50 million pound strikers that you have to do something with, right? So the loan makes some sense. Why I wish it would have had an option or an obligation, some kind of buying clause in it, is because I could see a world where he's pretty undervalued right now. I think his transfer market value is only around 30 million. But he did go for 80 million a couple summers ago to Paris, and that's kind of like his quality if he lives up to his potential. So I could see a world where we play him a lot, he plays well, and then that value skyrockets, and then we go back to PSG in the summer and say, hey, we do want to buy him. What are we offering? Or what are you offering? And, that value could go up quite a bit. So I'm hoping that with him, if he does play well, and it looks like he's going to be good for the project long term, I hope that we sort something out in January for some kind of option to buy at the end that kind of meets somewhere in the middle, somewhere around maybe 40, 50 max or something like that. I don't know. We'll see. But Yohan Visa just went for like 65 million. So the striker market right now is insane. So who knows? But let's jump back over and look at his profile and look at some of the stats real quick. So what we're going to be getting in this player, a player who played only a handful of games last season for Paris, only 10 games, 2 starts last season, but then he made that move to Juventus last season in January, and you might remember that some because that was at the time where we were also in for him, and apparently he never really wanted to go. He preferred to go to Juventus, so it wasn't ever a huge, we weren't ever really in the race, it seems, but when he did go to Juve last season, 16 matches, 13 starts, this is just in Serie A, 8 goals, 1 assist, and from what I can see from Serie A journalists and Juve fans, is he was by far the best striker that they had at the club and one of the best in the Serie A last season when he came to Juve. And he really wanted to stay at Juve apparently, but they just couldn't make the financials work out somehow. I don't know if it was the wage or if it was the fee, but obviously that didn't work out. So now we can kind of take another opportunistic approach and bring in a player that we weren't previously linked to and probably didn't have much interest in, but being opportunistic, I guess it works sometimes, right? So that's his stats, kind of his raw stats. If you look at, he's a really good dribbler for a forward. He's actually a pretty decent presser as well, apparently. I didn't watch a ton of tape on him, but I did watch a few highlight reels, and I watched one kind of like clips combo that we're going to go into in a second here. So I watched a decent amount of him yesterday, and some of the things that I pointed out. Actually, we'll hold on that for a second. Let's go to this because I had a few more observations just based on his numbers and watching some of those clips. One thing I thought was really interesting, if you just look at the radar here, his conversion percentage last season, 97th percentile in conversions. And that's something that I've heard about Muani for a while, is that he's actually a pretty good finisher and he takes his chances well. I think that was one of the big things that was attractive about him coming out of Frankfurt. And you can see if we scroll down here, not that this is like the end all be all, but if you look at his XG season on season, 15 goals, 13 XG. This season, 6 goals, 6 XG, 8 goals, 4 XG, 12 goals, 10 XG. So he's consistently overperforming his XG, which is typically at least some indicator that a player is a good finisher, right? They're making more of the chances that they're getting. The XG is saying that they're lower chances, but they're converting them, right? So that's a good sign. And then if we come over here, because there's a lot of talk about where he's going to play, and I think that's super valid. He has played some on the left, as you can see, some on the right. Actually, I was surprised to see that, according to Transfermarkt, at least, he's played more on the right than he has on the left. Both of those are kind of scattered throughout his career. A lot of it's more so with the international team because of Mbappe typically playing through the middle, and Giroud and some of those players as well. So he's had to play out on the wings at times. But he has played typically as a center forward. And so if we look at where does that leave him in our squad, I think that's kind of a tricky situation to talk about. Well, it's not a tricky situation to talk about. I think it's a tricky situation because when fit, I think you want to see Solanke and Richie on the field. And we will see plenty of all of them because there could be, 50, 60 games this season. But talking about where they're playing best, their best positions are, I think all three of those players, Kolo Muani, Richie, and Solanke, are all best at striker. Watching the tape yesterday, and obviously it wasn't a huge sample size, but it does look like he's probably better playing through the middle than he is playing out wide. He can play out wide, and those situations are more transitional, oftentimes it looks like, but I think what we'd want to do is play him more through the middle. So that could be tricky as far as squad selection goes. What Thomas Frank ends up doing, if he ends up putting him in lineups with Solanke or Richie at the striker position, or if he plays and playing Kolo Muani off to the left, or probably the left, although it says he's played more on the right. He does play a pretty good ball in from the right, and he drives pretty well from both sides with the ball. So he is versatile, but he's probably better playing through the middle. So if we head back over here, and we see this is the season that he was with Eintracht and had a really good season that spurred him on to going to PSG. You can see this is the system of play that Oliver Glasner played mostly a 3-back with a 1 striker up top, which was typically Kolo Muani. So even when he did play in a 3-back, typically he would play with that sole striker position. Now, the 2 players playing under him typically weren't wingers. Typically, he was playing with 2 cams or 2 attacking midfielders underneath him. So there was definitely some fluidity there, which is definitely going to help with playing with the players that we have, especially I'm thinking of like Xavi Simons. If Xavi Simons plays through the middle or even plays off to the left at times, I think there's going to be some really good fluidity and movement there. So overall, yeah, I think probably best as a striker, but I think he can do a lot from all positions. So that's very encouraging. And then so I'm going to go over some of the notes I took from watching these clips, but I just want to shout out this from Scout Nation and just show you this one clip because this kind of summarizes what you get in Kolo Muani, right? I mean, the touch to take it down, the turn in the box, doesn't get a shot off, but he lays it off to a teammate who's able to then get the ball and finish for a goal, right? So that's kind of what you're getting from Kolo Muani, a player that is, and that's where I would say here, just as good in the box as he is in transition. So we don't have a ton of players that are good at being in the box and playing. So I've heard a lot of people say that he's a good combination of Richie and Solanke because Solanke definitely has more of those qualities. If you were to see somebody do a move like that, it would definitely be more so Solanke than Richie, right? But Richie is typically better at some of the other things like holding the ball up. Typically, he's better at finishing with his head. He's good at taking his chances in the box, whereas Solanke isn't quite as good as that. I think Solanke is probably more of a transitional player, but he's okay in the box as well. So with Kolo Muani, it looks like you're getting a little bit of both. So just quick notes going over what I saw Tall and smooth, good close control, very good close control. And I would recommend going and watching this video here by Scout Nation, why Tottenham signed Randall Colomwani. It's a good one. So ability to run in behind, which we desperately need. That's something that we don't really have a lot, and that's why you see Brennan playing a lot from the left. Good, not elite finisher, but above average for sure. We kind of went over that with some of his XG numbers, and if you watch these clips or any of the highlights from him, definitely good at taking his chances, and he can finish from a lot of different angles. Just as good as he in the box as he in transition. We just said that. Kind of a note that I had, just a pest for defenders. Like, it seemed that no matter where he was on the pitch and what he was doing with the ball, he was just causing the defender problems. And a lot of times you saw the defenders pulling him down and oftentimes getting a yellow card just because they were sick of dealing with him. And I think it's really good to have a player like that in the squad. I think Xavi Simons could be a lot like that as well. Players that just piss off the opposing team. And there's a number of reasons why that's good, but I think it's good to always have more than one player like that in the squad. Seems to always play forward and wants to make something happen. Now, again, watching 15 minutes of clips or whatever is not going to give you every action throughout the game, right? So maybe these are just the clips that he did produce something. So obviously he's making something happen. But I think that's from watching him a couple times live as well. It does seem like he's not a player that wants to stand around. It seems like he wants to make things happen for sure. Not necessarily creative, but very instinctual and good at combining and setting up with teammates. You just saw that in the clip there where he turns, wasn't able to get a shot off, but even though he's being taken down, he still lays the ball off for a teammate to score. And that proves itself out in multiple clips where, maybe there's combinations being played on the box and he's able to just get the ball, make a move, and lay it off to somebody else to keep that move happening. And oftentimes that leads in a goal, which is great to see. Can finish in multiple ways. We kind of just went over that. And then we kind of went over this as well. Can play left wing, right wing. But I think it's more so playing through the middle where he's best. So one thing that I pointed out in watching him, and I don't want you to look at this here. This isn't scary. Ooh, the name that you see on the screen. I'm not making a one-to-one comparison on their actual abilities or like the output between these two players, but the way that they play is very, very similar. And you can see that in some of their radars, right? Very good converters, non-penalty XG. Obviously, Isak got way more last season. I think he led the Premier League in scoring last season. Goals scored, sorry. Duels, actually, I was surprised to see that Colomwani is actually a little bit better than that. He's in the, 67th percentile, which is not terrible. But then pretty good creators, touches in the box, gets a lot of touch in the box. So you can see by the overall shape, very similar in some ways. And I think just the way that they play, both very good at driving in from either side, good with the ball, good control, tall and like fluid with their motions. I think that he could potentially be a player similar to that. Obviously, it's a very high bar, so I'm not saying that he's going to be that for us necessarily, but I think you're going to see a lot of the same actions out of him. So that's kind of the wrap up on Colomwani. Very exciting transfer again. Overall, very happy about having him in the squad. I think that he's going to be a great addition no matter where he plays, and I'm just happy to see that we're bringing in players that improve the starting 11 overall. So quickly to just kind of close out the yesterday's business and close out the window. We have, hi Ali, I didn't actually mean to click on you. Brian Hill goes on a permanent deal to Girona, who Brian Hill last season actually had a pretty good season. That's where he played. 3 goals, 3 assists, 21 starts for a team that finished 16th, but he was one of the brighter spots for the team, so I'm glad to see him go there. Wish him all the best of luck. Manor Solomon goes to Villarreal on loan, so we'll redress his situation next year, I guess. We'll be playing Villarreal in our first Champions League game, so they have some players. If you know, you know. And so, all of that being said, leads us to the overall business of the window. And now, I don't want you to look at this here, because that's a fake number, because I don't like counting transfers that came in the previous season when they go on the books. I think the point of transfers is not to look at the money. The point of transfers is to look at how they improve the squad. So some of these players were already with the squad last season, so in my opinion, they don't really count. So you have really just Kudus and Simmons coming on permanent deals, both absolutely fantastic deals. And then you have Danso coming in, Matisse Tell and Danso coming in on permanence. They were already with the squad last season, obviously. Same with Vuskovic, wasn't with the squad, but we had signed him. Koto Dakai is a new transfer this offseason. And João Palhinha, new transfer this offseason, a loan deal though. This one with an option to buy, I think is somewhere between 25 and 30 million. And then Kolomwani. So overall, all in all, looking at that, what would you guys give the transfer window out of 10? In my opinion, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I break it down in two parts, right? So I think improving the squad, improving like player quality, I think you have to give it a minimum of a 9 out of 10. All four of those players that we brought in, Palhinha, Xavi Simons, Kudus, and Kolomwani, all improve the first team 11. All could be potential starters for most games. And that's a criticism I've had and a lot of Spurs fans have had over the years of leaving the board, of not bringing in players that actually improve the first 11. So very good to see that. Quality-wise, you have to give it at least a 9 out of 10. But where I give it a 7 out of 10 for the whole window is just because squad planning-wise, I think it was really, really poor. Looks like we were reactionary a lot of the times. We didn't move out as many players as we needed to. We have players that all play similar positions, all have a similar profile. We're still lacking some profiles in squad. So at best, I can give that probably a 4 out of 10. So that's kind of where we come to 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10 in the middle for the entire window. I think, and I don't want to be. The whole point of my channel is to not be super pessimistic and reactionary and just make explosive content. It's to be objective and positive most of the times. So I am positive in the window that we had. I just think it could be better and we need to address that. So overall, great window. Very excited for these players to come in. I'd like to see some more business being done in January. I think the two big things that we missed out on were center back and fullback help, and then replacing Son, obviously. So hopefully something like that happens in January, or probably preferred for me would be one of Tell or Odebert come on really well and end up being our starting left winger for the rest of the season. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But for now, thanks for watching. Catch you guys in tomorrow's video.